Now, a library has opened in the area of the former sprawling Aylesbury estate near Elephant Castle. It honours someone you may never have heard of before. It's called the Una Marson Library, after a poet, playwright and the BBC's first black radio producer in the 1930s. Writing a book about Ms Marson is broadcaster June Sapong, who joins me now. What a pleasure it is to have you here, June.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you. Una Marson was born in Jamaica. She died nearly 60 years ago in London, and now there's a library opened in her name.
Well, she died in Jamaica, actually.
She died in Jamaica,
yeah.
And now there's a library opened for her in London.
Yes. What's
the significance of it?
Well, I think the significance of it is just how important Una's contribution to the British broadcasting industry is. She was the first black producer, as you say, on the BBC, but she was also the first black woman to have her own show. And during the Second World War was such a popular voice in this country. And her show was called Calling the West Indies. And it basically featured her interviewing prominent people from what at the time was the colonies. And she was a contemporary of George Orwell. People forget George Orwell actually worked at the BBC. Yeah. And this woman who had such an extraordinary life has more or less been written out of history. So it's incredible that the library has been opened and named after her. I was at the launch, which was amazing. And I'm super excited to be writing her biography.
And so what she did back then was groundbreaking, not just because she was a woman, but a black woman in the 1930s doing what she did.
Pre-Windrush. Yeah. I mean, this is at a time where she would have been walking down the street and there would have been no other faces that looked like hers. And yeah, what a woman.
And she did write about it, a fabulous poem she wrote, or a very hard-hitting poem, Little Brown Girl, in which she talks about being in London in the 1930s. It says, "Don't you think they wonder why a little brown girl should roam about their city, their white city? You speak good English, little brown girl. How is it you speak English as though it belonged to you?" So she faced discrimination.
Yeah, I mean, such harsh discrimination, being spat out on the street, discrimination professionally as well. I mean, when she first moved from Jamaica, it took her years to find work, but she was determined. And as you say, she was also a playwright. So she managed to get her play staged in the West End. Can you imagine? And we think that the play is actually autobiographical. So yeah, I mean, what a woman.
And also another thing that I was interested to read about her was that she worked for the BBC, a massive organisation, which of course would have had some racist people in it.
Yes.
The organisation today will have some racist people in it. It's the nature of the organisation. But she fought that, didn't she? She fought discrimination in the civil rights movement back in the day.
She did, and she was part of also the Pan-Africanist movement. So a lot of revolutionaries that went back to seek independence for their countries, she worked alongside. She worked alongside people like Kwame Nkrumah. She was mentored by Harold Moody. So all of these quote-unquote great men, Una was the force behind them.
Just a very quick question for you, as we're running out of time, but I really want to ask this. June, you are a successful broadcaster, as are many other women. Would you have done what you've done if it wasn't for this lady?
No way. Without, I say, without Una, there would be no Floella, there'd be no Moira, and there certainly would be no me.
Really?
Yeah,
that much?
It started with her.
And I know your book comes out later this year in October. We really look forward to that. June Sapong, what a pleasure it is to have you here in the studio. Many thanks. Now, that was broadcaster June Sapong on BBC London.